Welcome to the Serious TV Drama Podcast. I'm Scott, and joining me once again, let me give this some thought because I didn't come up with one this week. Dancer. The tiny dancer to my tentacly cancer. It's Jamie. Hey, Jamie.
Hey, murder boners be damned. They didn't get in the way of the writers' kill in this finale.
Oh, man. And salute to writers. I decided not to write anything down for this podcast. And I realized, oh, wait, the dopey intros. I was like, wait, I need something. I want to rhyme with cancer. Dancer, tiny dancer. There it is. Got it. So we are here to discuss, well, we're really going to be digging into the season 4 finale of The Boys. And afterwards, we will also be talking about the latest episode of Evil, how to build a chatbot. I keep wanting to say how to train a chatbot, but I think it's how to build a chatbot. But we are going to be focusing most of our time on the season 4 finale of The Boys, which once upon a time had a different title. But due to certain events in quote unquote real life, that title, which I said last week was Assassination Run, was changed to the more generic season 4 finale. And if I recall, this episode also began with a rather wordy disclaimer, pretty much, if I recall, clarifying that, any similarity to the events is coincidental. This episode was written and filmed several months ago, and they also wanted to make sure, they wanted to be clear that despite the fact that the show is immersed in fantasy violence and all sorts of gore and blood, but as far as real life is concerned, the producers, writers, and creators are all vehemently against violence and, and its uses and whatever. So,
listen, Amazon wanted everyone to know they had nothing to do with this.
Yeah, these things happen, apparently. And, every weekend something crazy happens now. So before we get into the different aspects of this episode, and we'll probably be talking about both the episode and the season as a whole as one general conversation, I had a thought earlier today, and instead of writing it down, I figured I'll just try to freewheel it here. So I was thinking about it. I was thinking about The Boys. I was thinking also about the previous podcast I did with a couple weeks ago with Brian about The Bear. And I remember reading a lot of the Bear stuff after doing the podcast, seeing the different reviews of it and whatever, because I hadn't really read anything. And I did kind of do a little taste test after finishing The Boys. I started combing the internet, looking at different articles about it. And I saw, there was a wide range of reactions and responses to that as well. So I always want to clarify the way I feel about doing this podcast, and I've been doing now for 10 plus years. And as many know, this podcast started out as a Mad Men podcast. And then within about 4 or 5 episodes, we started branching out and covering all other TV shows whenever possible. But usually when we're doing a series week after week, well, number one, we're picking a series that we already really like, that it's usually a high quality series. And the majority of the things we're going to say are probably going to be positive because it's already a high quality series, either it was Mad Men or Breaking Bad or Legion or Better Call Saul or whatever else that we've covered over the years.
Yep.
And sometimes when shows kind of went awry or went bad or just became less interesting to talk about, well, then we just stopped talking about them, like the CW superhero shows and things like that. But the point I wanted to make was, I never want to be critical for criticism's sake, but I also don't like to turn off my brain or turn off the writer side of my brain when I'm watching a series, especially one that I consider in previous seasons to be a pretty high quality series in terms of writing, acting, etc. Um, and that's why, and so if there are times when, I may disagree with whoever my co-host is, that then there may be disagreements with me and Jamie tonight. There were mild disagreements between me and Brian during the Bear. To me, that just makes for better podcasting anyway. Um, I've thought a lot about the boys and this episode and this season as a whole, perhaps even more importantly. And I'm aware that I will have positive things to say, but I'm also going to have a number of negative things to say. And we may be in sync, we may not be, but I'm just giving a very honest take on it. And, you know, I'm not, I've read a lot of comments about it, right? And I agree with some things I don't. I think some people are being a little harsher than they need to be. I also think some people are giving it a pass more than it deserves. And again, that's kind of the way I felt about The Bear. And again, folks, if you haven't listened to that podcast, please do. I know it's 3 hours, but I'd say there's at least an hour and a half worth of good stuff in there. And I've thought about The Bear more since that podcast even. And I was even talking about it earlier this evening. And the person I was talking to, she made a point that I don't think we ever made on the podcast, and we probably should have. And that was probably one of the biggest problems of season 3 of The Bear, as high quality, as well written and acted and directed and put together as the season was. One could also say, and I'll credit Adrian with this, I thought it was such an astute observation, there was very little to any plot progression in season 3 of The Bear. And if you think about where the season starts and certain questions or things to be resolved, and you go, were any of those things actually resolved by the end of the season? It's like, not really.
Nope.
And you can tick them all off. Obviously, this podcast is not about The Bear, but for whatever reason, maybe because they both came out within the same month, they're both shows that are the B, the boys, The Bear, whatever, the boys, the bear. And even though they're obviously wildly different shows, there's a lot of commonality in my head about my issues with both of them. And I think probably some of that's going to come out during the course of this podcast. So with all that rambly crap said, hopefully it wasn't too rambly. Hopefully it made some sense. Let's get into the season 4 finale. And we talked a bit towards the end of our boys coverage last week about things that we foresaw happening going into the finale or whatever. And for the most part, I don't think anything is worth a victory lap, because many of the things that we foresaw happening, and it's the only thing I scribbled. Jamie, I'll show you I'll raise it to the video. That's, even though it's an audio podcast, so it's so good to do. The only thing I wrote, I scribbled down things while I was watching it, but then I love that I scribble so badly that I can't read what the hell I wrote. So it's entirely pointless. But let me see if I can read one of these things. Okay. So we had things like, I think everyone knew this was going to be the case. Once we saw that the shapeshifter had taken Annie's face and everything else for that matter, it seemed pretty clear. Oh, so when the shapeshifter goes to kill, the president-elect, she's going to do it as Annie, because it's just the perfect frame job, especially since of everything that's been going on with Annie in the public eye. That was kind of an obvious one. So no kudos for that. And also said, oh, that laptop must have the information on what happened at the tech mansion, whatever, Tech Knight's mansion, whatever. Duh, Scott, really? We both were talking about how we felt Newman was probably going to do the right thing, or try to do the right thing after all. Again, that seemed pretty obvious going into the episode. So I'm not going to put I'm not going to give myself a pat on the back. I screwed up, thinking Stan Edgar was going to show up again. He did not. So boo, but whatever. Now, one thing I was kind of proud of, even though I had said, it'll probably be next season. I'm going to go post credits is like it's the next season already. Soldier Boy does show up at the very, very end of this episode. So, yay! Knew that was going to be a big thing going into it, especially when you have a season where there's so much about fathers and sons.
Mhm.
How you're not going to play into that one, or fathers and their children, I should say, because put Vicky in there as well. Can I see anything else? I'll have a question about that, but I'm gonna save that for later. And what did I write here? What did I write here? More deep murdering psycho. Well,
You did, yeah.
and I think we both thought that, I think it almost went without saying that, oh, Sage is still going to play a major part here. And, this is going to, whatever it's going to end up being whatever her actual
You bet
plan
your
is.
ass.
And then she shows up and does that. And I love the one of the things I did really like about the episode was her attitude, when she shows up, about how she just did this just to see if she could do it.
I love, you know what? That is such a, it's the perfect reason why someone who had like super intelligence would do something
Right.
just to see if they could do it.
Yeah. It made perfect sense to me. I couldn't think of a better reason for her to do it. But I was very happy when she popped up there. But, I mean, uh, the good thing about me not having any notes from this point on is that I'm willing to let you look at me. I'm willing. Wow. 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 Wow.
Step aside,
Wow.
yeah.
Hashtag Scott too. I figure
Okay.
I'll let you. I'll let you start with wherever you want to start with, and then we'll just
Yeah.
go from there. This will probably be one of our more conversational podcasts, which I think will make for a better one.
Okay. So the predictions I had for at some point in this season, I figured it would probably start happening is that actually did happen is one, pretty sure that Kamiko was going to talk.
Right. Right.
I had a pretty strong feeling it was going to happen once we learned why she stopped speaking.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And two, backing up the belief that Ryan was going to have to hurt somebody he really cared about because there had to be a catalyst to push him into bad.
Yeah.
There was no way he was going to be bad because we were shown over and over again. He has his mom's heart. He's a good kid. He has the capability of like any other human to do evil. But it was going to come down to hurting somebody. So those two things, we got them before the season was done. One note that I do have, because we're kind of going out of order. We're jumping all over the place with this episode. But I felt that it was worth saying that Erin Moriarty, she is somebody I've been kind of given razzing and kind of given a little crap for her character acting this season.
Mm-hmm.
Not that she's had the best lines to deliver and so on and so forth, but just her character Starlight, and she's never been one of my favorite characters in this show. But this episode and this finale, they really gave her some meat to chew on. And the scene where she had to deal with like a doppelganger version of herself going toe to toe, the way that they cut that scene and edit it, the passion and the difference between the two performances of the two characters was just really, really well done. And I enjoyed it probably more than any other screen time she's had in the series. So hats off to her on that.
Okay. I agree with, I'm going to say generally agree with that. I think it goes without saying, I don't think you're really, it is a lukewarm to tepid take of Starlight's not the most interesting character. She's not. She's never has been.
She isn't.
She doesn't. It's not the nature of that character. When you've got characters ranging from Homelander to the Butcher, but even Huey, whatever, there's just more interesting stuff to play with there. So I will agree. I thought I'm always fascinated when I watch movies or TV shows when you have the whole, oh, the actors playing against themselves, because those of us who have been on this earth a little bit longer than others, we remember watching things where you always look for the split in the
Yes.
screen where
Yes. Where's the line?
like I used to, like I was a fan of the show, of the daytime soap opera All My Children for a long time, and probably my favorite thing about that was David Canary playing both Adam and Stuart Chandler. And it was just me basically, you couldn't get as much the pureness and the purity and goodness of Stewart and the dastardly evil of Adam Chandler and what, but it was a great performance, or two performances, but you always look for that little line. Where in the screen is it? Where is it? Oh, it's the back of his head. Oh, it's the back of his head. And it clearly is not the same head, but okay, whatever. We've come so far over the years from those days to even, the Back to the Future movies. And now when we watch a TV show where once upon a time you didn't have that kind of budget to really pull this off, it's generally, it was, especially during the fight scene, it's pretty seamless. So it is well done. However, I wasn't going to start off with one of my criticisms of the episode, but since it got brought up,
Yeah, let's go there.
I'm gonna lean in on one of my big criticism of the episode. Okay, I I love the reveal when they figure out that this is, shapeshifter Annie.
Yep.
And I love everything from the Huey and MM scene and them standing next to each other. Don't look. I thought was hysterical. I thought that was so well done. And then when the crazy shit first starts and Shapeshifter Annie starts killing people, and this is an episode where there's a number of rather horrific, gory, bloody deaths. I hope I pronounced that correctly, because, lisp. But the one that got me the most is when I think it's the very first Secret Service agent she takes out, and she flings him against like a desk, and his whole body
Oh
kind
my
of
God,
breaks
yeah.
and bends in the wrong direction. That was the one that made
Yep.
I had a much bigger reaction to that than, like, the woman being put on the hook, or
I did too. Yeah.
because those are kind of things I've seen before. I mean,
Yeah.
if you've watched any slasher movies from the 80s, people are getting put on hooks all the time. There's impalings up the yin yang.
It's a classic.
But let me get to the point of why ultimately I am going to come down on this. The problem was this. Well, there's actually a couple problems. Number one, I kind of wish they had established this shapeshifter character much earlier in the season. That this had been an antagonist that we're going to have to worry about, that
Yeah.
didn't just kind of pop up like in the previous episode or whatever. And now it's going to be, because then I think the threat would have been felt more real to me. And it would have been like,
Yeah.
this is like a real villain kind of thing. Not someone
You bet.
not someone who basically gets just slightly more screen time than Web Weaver. So that was a little bit of a problem. But let's even put that aside. I can even put that aside. Fine, put it aside. But this is a finale. And we've had finales that have had like major fight scenes. Think of the final episode of last year with Soldier Boy and Homelander and Queen Maeve and Butcher. Everyone been involved. It was just whatever. And you can go the previous season with Stormfront, all the crazy stuff. It looked like the big fight was this. And then it kind of felt like, wait, is that it? Because didn't it feel like when she killed her, you kept thinking, no, is that it? I kept thinking I kept going, wait, she's not dead. She can't be dead from that. This is going to keep going, right? And it never did. It was like, oh, that's it? I found it started off strong, but the actual fight between them and how quickly and easily it's ultimately resolved was, to put it mildly, unsatisfying for me. I was like, okay, that was it was just, for a show that has done such a great and fun job of choreographing fights and I'm usually not let down by how they end. Like the fight when was it the previous episode when you had New Black Noir and the Deep going after Huey and Starlight and all them, and then A-Train comes to the rescue. Guess what? Better fight scene.
Yeah.
Better, and and that wasn't the finale. This is a show that's known for like really holy shit finales, and this is like, oh, is that it? Oh, okay, all
You
right.
know what? I I'm going to say 75% yes, but on the 25% no. Um, Maybe there's just some rounding out. I mean, not to say that this was like the big plan or anything, because you're right. It was a quick, it was done in you kind of expected more out of it. But when you look at the same episode, you have two other fights that happen in this episode where the boys lost. And that's against Butcher slash Kessler. And at the very end of the episode, when everyone is separated and pulled apart, like when they were going to be separate and safe, and they were attacked, and the soups got away, but our humans didn't. The boys didn't.
What Butcher Kessler? Which thing are you referring to? Because I haven't.
Well, when they were deciding that they were going to work with Victoria and work with her and keep her safe,
Oh,
keep her
okay.
daughter safe, and
All
he
right.
stepped in, and
All right.
now Butcher's no longer working with the boys. He's
Gotcha.
Kessler.
Right. Okay. See, my pushback on your pushback. Thank you for setting me up with an easy one. So it's going to be that kind of a night, Jamie.
Like
So
I said,
buckle
I'm
up.
not saying that they went into it and said, we're going to round this out well. I
Well,
guess I'm saying it
here's the
didn't
thing.
overall bother me
Ne-
because I watched 3 battles and 2 of them they lost, and I kind of liked ending the season feeling like, well, what the fuck now?
Well, my feeling is number one, I don't really regard either of those two other scenes as actual battles. One
Okay,
is
fair enough.
Butcher shows up, the tentacles come out, yay! Oh, wait, who was saying all season tentacles? Tentacles. It's going to be tentacles. It was
It's
tentacles.
really, you know what? It's
Um,
really the weapon of the season.
And I love that when you dig into it, you realize it's the cancer itself is what the tentacles are coming out
Yeah,
of.
yeah.
And apparently, this was also inspired from the animated, Diabolical, The Boys thing, which dealt with, one of the stories there, had, was it like 2 people who are not, characters from, that were on the show, but I think the wife is dying of cancer and she gets the V and it becomes like a tentacle thing, whatever. And they kind of use that for Butcher here. So
Ambrosia has tentacles. It didn't end well for her.
yeah. But yeah, he shows up with his tentacles, basically, knocks people around, knocks people away from him and rips her apart. So it's not really a fight scene; it's more of a murder scene. And the ending, and yeah, there's no real fighting going on. And the ending, well, you know what? I know we're gonna. Well, you know what? We already said from the top we're gonna jump around. So yeah,
We're all over the place.
let's
Just
go
hang
there.
in there with us.
So let's do that. Yeah, again, we're not recapping. You've watched it. You don't need a recap. You probably get annoyed when I do the recaps. I wouldn't blame you. I get annoyed when I do the recaps. Okay, here's my feeling on the ending. And again, I'm gonna. Okay, this is. I'm going. Oh, I said we're gonna have fun here, Jamie. Again, there are things I. It's not that I didn't like it, and we'll take this from Sage showing up with Homelander on.
Okay.
Because I believe it's from that point on is when all the dominoes start to fall. Because Homelander's at his house that he wrecked earlier in the episode. Although, correct me if I'm wrong, because I'm bringing this up for something I'm going to talk about minutes after, because it's all in my big stupid head. We didn't, even though we hear him doing it, we didn't actually see Homelander wreck his place, right?
No.
He starts to, then when Ryan comes in, it's all wrecked. And it's all burning.
We just had Ryan's point of view, yeah,
right,
where he was outside of the door.
I have a reason for mentioning that, but I'll get to it later. Let me stick with where we're. I'm gonna stay on. I want to stay on the not the A train, on the Sage train here. So Homelander's sitting there, kind of dejected because all his plans went to shit. Because it's kind of and proof positive that just because you might be the most powerful person on the earth, you're clearly not the smartest person on earth because you kicked
all
her
that
out
wisdom
and you. And you have although you've had to restrain yourself any number of times during the course of this season, which is always fun to watch, but your impulses you generally can't control. And we've seen that from season 1 on, but even more so here, and all the problems that have happened and how your plans just went to shit. Even though I will give Homelander and the show itself credit. They came up with a different way, and I'll even say maybe a better way to reveal to the world that Newman was actually a soup.
Yeah,
I thought that was
I
going to
didn't see it
happen.
coming.
I thought I had said I thought it was going to happen during the context of the actual attempted assassination
Mm-hmm.
on Singer, and like I love that they kind of took care of
Yep.
it like really early, just on TV. You know, he does the laser thing on her, which it's heat. We can call it heat vision. It's heat vision.
Yeah.
It's just not as powerful as Superman's because Homelander's no Superman. Anyway, so he's sitting there.
By the way, I loved that. I absolutely loved all of that where it's like, boom, it happened and he just walks away.
Yeah, because he doesn't I've talked a lot in my life about, and in my own writing, it's even in one of my scripts I wrote once about, and if there's ever a show that was so great about it, it's probably Breaking Bad. It's about people having to deal with and being aware that there are always consequences for your
Yes.
actions. And Homelander does not give a fuck about consequences. He never foresees consequences because he thinks, as you were saying last week, he thinks he's so above it all because he sees himself as being practically immortal, or maybe just sees himself as immortal, period, as a god. Gods don't worry about consequences. They cause the consequences for others, but they don't have to worry about them for themselves. And he's discovering, well, that's not really true. Sage shows up, right? And we were just talking about this before the podcast, and he's obviously shocked of her showing up at all. But again, Miss 13 chess moves ahead of everybody else. This is still her plan. She had another plan. And it's all working out fine because it turns out, with Newman getting killed and that becoming public news, and then, they had the goods on Singer. They had recordings of him talking about wanting to have her assassinated, which meant he was going to be removed from office, which then means the Speaker of the House, third in line for ascension, becomes president, and we've already met that character a couple of times this season, and so we already know he's more than happy to be Homelander's puppet, and that was all part of her plan. And the fact that she talks about the reason why she did it was just to see if she could is amazing. Love that. It's so perfect because it fits someone who would have the ego that she has. And I would imagine if you're the smartest person in the world, one of the issues you'd have to deal with is the fucking boredom of when you're that much smarter than everybody else.
Yeah. Look at something like Sherlock. I mean, it's like a constant joke with Sherlock of all of these cases that he can solve in half a second, and then it's next.
Right. Exactly. He's only intrigued by the more interesting cases, and there's a few other things like that that are in that same vein of Sherlock, but Sherlock's actually the best kind of example. So well done there. So, but here's the problem. So we've seen this whole episode and everything's gone to shit. And then Sage shows up and said, no. I still had a plan that I didn't tell it. I didn't reveal it to anyone in the audience or whatever. And I was like, okay, I'm all right with this. But it was kind of like, and then the dominoes of, oh, now we're going to see everyone who's gone their separate ways and how they all get caught and they all get arrested, whatever. And it kind of was like, like bam, bam, bam. And I was like, oh, wait, I can appreciate the what the fuck do we do now aspect of it all. But there was also something that felt kind of both underwhelming and again unsatisfying about that for me as well. And so I couldn't decide I couldn't decide if it bothered me more or less as a result of that. I'm and even right now I'm still kind of on the fence about it. And unfortunately, and again, this is kind of slightly similar to what I was talking about the bear in that podcast. You can't help but compare these things to previous seasons. And did I think that this was a better way to end this season than the previous seasons? Other than the post-credit reveal, which I love that, that. But this, I was like going, okay, all right, I guess. fine. It just, I, I guess it was such a quick denouement, however that word is pronounced. I've never been good at pronouncing words, as you know. And I was kind of like, I think underwhelmed might be the best way to put it. I was like, oh, look, they got the two idiots from, I called them idiots, the two idiots from Gen V to show up again. Yay.
Okay, see, and I was going to pull that in there to partner your statement on that is I mean, yes, we saw them for a moment within the season earlier. We, okay, they're here, we're in the same universe and they're working with Homelander. Just a reminder, right? But it does lead me to think about like, what does that even mean to people who didn't watch Gen V, which if
Right.
you haven't, you just go watch it. It's silly that you didn't.
Yeah, I agree.
But what does that do for them? Nothing. That leaves us with where's the emotional value or response or whatever for these people. Second, I do the reason why I can still get behind how that quick end came in with the separation is because there's something to it that is interesting to me. And that's when they're having the press conference, Homelander takes over the press conference and then he talks about getting the Starlighters. We're going to round up all the Starlighters. But then we see them, they corner in all these different places. They corner our team, but they're not taking the soups. They're not even trying. They're not attacking. She's like Starlight did not get attacked. She let her go. And it was the same thing with Kamiko. They just held her back. They didn't have to fight her because they told Frenchie, with the power to just go into the boat. They didn't have to fight her. They aren't fighting the soups. They're just taking the ones that aren't. And that's what I found interesting.
Here's my problem. I'll smack that back. So we've talked about we've referred to Gen V a couple times, and we're going to assume that most, if not all, the people who are listening to this talk about the boys watch Gen V. Did we talk about Gen V on the pod? We must have talked about Gen V on the podcast, didn't we? Did we cover it on the podcast? I'm assuming we did. I hope we did. It would be weird if we did.
We didn't do a full coverage of everything, but yes, we've mentioned it. We've covered it.
All right, but I'm going to ask something really basic here, Jamie. Really, 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 really basic.
You got it.
Tell me, Jamie, how did the season 1 of Gen V end?
They joined Homelander when Homelander landed over at the college.
You're talking about something minor. I'm talking about the major storyline with the major characters. How did Gen V season 1 end? Tell me how Gen V ended.
Oh, where we had some very specific characters locked in.
Gen V ended with all the protagonists, all the main ones that we follow, were basically taken away. They're
and in like
locked up and put away.
Psychological lockup.
They're captured and put away. Hey, Jamie, how did the season of The Boys end? For the most part,
with the not soups getting captured,
but pretty much. And by the way, I don't know. Starlight or whatever the fuck her name is. She zips away because she got her powers again. I don't know that they let Kamiko go at that point. She was holding her. I don't was like, okay, you can go now. I didn't see that happen. So I don't know that Kamiko's not going along with them.
No, you're right. There's no guarantee that that's not what's going to happen. I feel like that's what it was alluding to. And I guess I found intrigue to it because it really pulled me into the mindset of something, along the lines of X-Men. Where you do have this idea of there's a separation between the people who are special and the people who are not special. And we're going to fight those that oppose us, but also we're going to leave a little extra room for those that are like us to prove a point.
I'm gonna say, because I think he didn't have they've killed fellow soups any number of times on this show, and I don't think there's any reason. I'm sorry, I don't think there's any reason they'll be, hey, Kamiko, you can go now. We can bookmark this for next season. I'm gonna say Kamiko was taken away with them as well. The only one who got away was Scott because the one she was fighting. Oh, by the way. This is the one thing I couldn't remember when I was watching it. Is that the character that we saw from the earlier season when they went to the place where all the dysfunctional Soups were, or is she from the Gen V?
She's from V.
Oh, she is from Gen V. I
I'm
wasn't
fairly
sure.
certain I
I
remember her
could have
from V
sworn.
because
I see. I
I
thought she was from the earlier season.
she
I
she
think
may
she
she may
is.
have been because something mixes together when they went into where it was like yeah, like the mental hospital type thing for
Yeah,
Suits.
especially because I used another character from that as well when they captured MM in the bathroom, the guy with the crazy dick thing, whatever. Uh,
Yep.
but
Tap tap tap, I'm
but I
back.
think that one was the more scarier one that was there that they were focusing on.
Yeah.
Because
Yeah.
she was, I mean, I remember it was like a bald
How
girl. I can't, I just, I mean, not,
well, and I think we made some jokes and stuff about it being really similar to like 11.
yeah, right. So I'm pretty sure that's what that was. So my point being is like they both Gen V and this season of The Boys essentially end with most, if not all, of our quote unquote heroes being captured and taken away, and the other underlying plot theme is like, oh, but there's this virus we have to worry about. Gen V ends with, oh, there's a virus we
The
have to worry
virus
about.
we have to
And
worry
then at the
about.
end of this, Butcher's the one who's still on the road with, what does he have with him? The virus we have to worry about. So there was a little bit, hey, I'm feeling a little similarity, deja vu kind
And
of a thing
does
here.
that
And it wasn't that long
similarity
ago.
bother you or does it like sit comfortably? Because I think that it could go either way for a person.
I would say if you don't care about things like originality, then it shouldn't bother you. If you want things to be different, like I don't want to watch a season of Better Call Saul and have the last episode and the last 10 minutes of an episode be like a mirror-like parallel
Right.
to a final episode of Breaking Bad. Cause I think would have been, it would have been a legitimate, criticism. Like, really, they just ripped off the blueprint from a Breaking Bad episode. Thankfully, they never did that. That's kind of what I thought they did here to a certain extent. And it's really fresh in my memory because that was, we had the Gen V in between the two seasons.
Yeah.
Again, I'm not, to be clear, it's again, I sound like the Bear podcast. I'm not saying it was bad, but,
Well, it's
but it's worthy, but
interesting
it's
to
still
me
worthy of
having you
criticism, you know?
it's interesting to me having you bring it up because I mean, I watched Gen V about the same time. We were watching it around that's the same time of each other.
Hmm.
And to be perfectly honest, I wasn't making those parallels when I was watching the finale of The Boys. Looking back and
It,
having it lined up, okay, yeah, I
it,
can absolutely see that, and I can stand by what you're saying is
my,
it being so similar, um,
it
for
was,
better or for worse. But
I was feeling a sense of deja vu, but I couldn't put my finger on it. And then when the two characters from Gen V showed up, I went, that's what it is.
that's it.
This
That's
is
the
the
one.
end. This is the end of Gen V because they're rounding them all up. Kind of like what they did at the end of Gen V. It's like, okay, again, I think knowing that there's going to be only a fifth season and that's that. So I feel, and if I'm going to be critical of this season, I am going to be, as much as I enjoyed a lot of it. Again, it's not a bad season, but it is the least of the four seasons I've gotten of the show so far. And I think more so than any of the other seasons, especially when we get to these final several minutes, this felt more like a precursor build up to the following season
Yep,
than a season by itself. And
that
I
is
don't, and
that's exactly how I've described it in the discussions I've had with people that have complaints about this season. Is that what this season's doing to me for me is just feels like it's really giving a solid setup to the finale of the
right.
show
But,
entirety.
but the problem with that, and this is kind of sort of, I keep linking the two. It's so funny. It's kind of sort of reminds me of the Bear, although not quite the quality of the Bear, so to speak. Is with the Bear, you got little plot progression. It seemed like they're just, and you end up with a to be continued kind of an aspect to it. So it's really all going to be about the next season where we're going to address all these storylines and whether this person's going to actually say this to this one or deal with this or that. That's kind of what they did here. Look, we've on the podcast alone 10 years and then in my life and had another couple decades, talk about TV, talk about seasons all the time. And it's certainly, there's been other seasons of television series that felt more like a laying the groundwork for a subsequent season. But the problem will always be, well, then that's a problem with that season because you didn't use one episode as a build-up. You used an entire season. And I'm sorry, there's no way around that kind of being, at the end of the day, a less than satisfying use of storytelling. And it's like, get to the point, get to where
Right.
we got to go. You and I have been both watching a show, or you just finished. I still have one more episode to go, a show on Apple TV, Dark Matter, where we felt, they spent far too many episodes in the midpoint of the season, and the show just wasn't going anywhere. It was literally not going anywhere. It's like running in place. But at least now now it's going somewhere. I remember
the second half is phenomenal, so don't listen to us as a reason not to watch it.
Yeah, this isn't the Changeling where you should steer
No kidding. Yep,
far away
absolutely.
from that. Never, ever,
it goes
ever
crazy places you don't want to go.
You're better off tracking down the movie Changeling that was directed by Clint Eastwood, which is kind of a big bore too, but has a very sweet Angelica Jolie in it. Or I remember going back to it's almost in the same milieu as The Boys. I remember when Preacher first started on AMC some years ago, and the problem with the first season of Preacher is the entire first season of Preacher is kind of unnecessary because all it is a lead up to the second season, and we're like, wait, did I just spend an entire season waiting to get to where this show is supposed to start in the first place? Did I just waste 10 episodes and 10 hours or 10 weeks of my life on this? And again, that show got better from second season, third season, where then it gets crazy bonkers, whatever. So this season of The Boys, again, there's a lot of stuff. We talked about it all, for several podcasts. There's a lot of stuff I like in it. I'm not going to say I don't like the season. I'm not going to say I don't like the finale. Both those statements wouldn't be true, but I have problems with the season and I have problems with the finale. And it's funny how my problems with the finale are pretty much indicative of the season. Overall. Again, there's a lot to like. And we'll talk about. We're going to talk about some of the stuff that we both like. So it's not, or some of the more surprising or shocking things. I like the fact that they weren't afraid to actually kill off, at least semi-major or recurring characters, like Vicky Newman, like Mallory, and people like that. I knew they were going to kill Vicky Newman. I knew that had to happen. I did not know that Mallory was going to get killed. And then I remember when it happens, that was probably the one moment in the episode where I was like genuinely shocked for a moment. And I was like, wait, she's dead, isn't she? Because she hit that wall really hard.
Yep.
And yeah, you were talking about it before. And if there was one little plot point I really thought, ooh, interesting in this episode was the way Ryan acts after that. And I think, oh, he did, it's kind of what you were saying. Did Ryan just go to the dark side? Is that where this is? Cause he didn't start crying or get all upset about killing Mallory. He kind of just practically sauntered out of there, man.
This is going to be a really dark seed of advice. But if you are in unfortunate enough circumstances in your life, do not tell your child that they are the product of rape. Don't do it. It will ruin a person. Don't do it. And Butcher, God love him, knew it was coming. And here's somebody that's always just so crass and blunt. And he was trying so hard to be soft and gentle and be a fucking parent. And Mallory was a politician. And it caused this to happen. With every good intention that she had, it all went away because she didn't let somebody who was a parent. Because for really all purpose at this point, the only real father figure, like true father, not just the guy standing in as father figure, but the real love, the admiration of another person, the only person in the world that Ryan has was Butcher.
Right.
And what it did to Ryan, it did to Butcher too, because he let Kessler step in and take over.
Right. One of the things so it doesn't sound like I'm just being negative for the whole damn episode. I'll go into some of the stuff I really enjoyed. Butcher in the hospital room, I really enjoyed all of that. The call to no, I mean because
Go to the topless steakhouse, Huey. It's my dying wish.
it's the fact that it's, for me in this episode, I think it's really the only, well, like, maybe I shouldn't say the only, well, no, for me it was. For me, it was the only really emotionally resonant part of the episode. And what, why am I drawing a blank on his name? Why do I always draw a blank on his name? It's so bad. He's like the star of the damn show, and I keep screwing up. Carl Urban. Carl Urban's performance is really masterful during the course of this whole scene, when he's on the phone with Huey. And yes, even when it's something as silly as the topless place in Nevada or whatever, not Branson. And then what happens with Mallory coming in with the kid to Connect Four and everything, and how it goes dark and wrong and everything. And then, then it's like letting Kessler take over, or get behind the wheel, so to speak. I thought that was that was probably one of the strongest things about the entire episode overall for me. I really kind of thought that was fantastic.
I really loved it. And the acknowledgement that, we realize afterwards is that he's acknowledging at this point that he himself is either about to die, right? And he apologizes to the boys. But when he's saying, "I'm sorry, tell the boys I'm sorry," and he can't come up with the right words, I think it's because he knew he was either going to die or Kessler was going to win. And he knew whatever he was going to do is going to be dangerous to them too.
Mm-hmm.
So, yeah, and I think that it's something you recognize after the fact, that when he was saying "I'm sorry," that it encompassed all of this. But it was it was a really great, like, this is where a villain is born kind of moment for Ryan, even if it doesn't fully pan out to full, we're not going to have, another 3 seasons of Ryan being a villain.
Right. Wait, are you, wait, just to be clear, I want to make sure I was understanding it correctly. Were you saying Butcher was either thinking he was going to die, or he was going to let Kessler take over?
Yeah, because I feel like he recognized that if he couldn't reach Ryan, if like that, he didn't have much time left to reach Ryan.
All right. Okay. I'll just respectfully disagree with that.
Okay.
I think at that point, because Mallory hasn't shown up with the kid or anything like that, I think at this point he thinks he's going to die. Because
I definitely think he's going to die, but I think he's at the place where it's either he's going to die or Kessler's going to step in, but either way, he's going to cease to be him.
Well, I see that. I personally don't think he thought that. But that's just my take. Oh, by the way, I was looking it up while we were talking. So yes, the person who took down, who gets Huey and then throws the boat, she is from season 2. She's Cindy from the Sage Grove Center.
Cindy.
Yeah. So yeah, I was right about that.
Now can I point out something that actually is one of my biggest errors of the entire season?
Mm-hmm.
Which is funny because it wasn't at first, but after this episode, now it is.
Okay.
And that is the storyline that we had for Frenchie this season. With the story of Colin. Because it's great. Okay. So he has a past love, whatever. And look at what he did to this person's family. Okay. I get all that. I get why we're putting that there, but why go through all the trouble of having this like love there and this whole thing between him and Kamiko, like, oh yeah, like you should date Colin because you love Colin. Right. And yeah. And then all of a sudden like, let's throw all that aside. Now we love each other. Like it was that, to me, that felt weird in this episode. Not the two of them caring about each other or falling in love, because for me, it felt like that's where they were going last season, right?
Right.
Um, so that makes sense. But why introduce Colin as a love interest?
Because they didn't know what to do with the Frenchie character that would give him any kind of adequate screen time. So they come up with that because they figured, okay, we've already, people have either assumed or interpreted or it's been alluded to that Frenchie at the very least is bisexual or pansexual, whatever.
Right?
Which
And
is not,
that's fine.
which by the way is not the case in the comics, but who cares? Um, that's neither here nor there.
Story.
But if you're just gonna, but what it ultimately was okay. Here's kind of a semi obstacle just to. We need a reason why Frenchie's going to go off the deep end and start using drugs again, even though that didn't really go on for that long either, quite frankly. I've been saying
But
since
see,
the
for
entire
what
season.
purpose? That's the thing. For what
No,
purpose?
they
That's
didn't. They didn't know what to do, so that's what they
yeah, I'm
did.
just like,
I'm
you know
telling.
what? If he would have gone to prison, if he would have put himself in jail, and then when he was in jail, he met the right person that helped him find the missing key to how to solve a problem or whatever,
Well,
that would at least
the
pan out.
problem was here. Look, because they weren't giving these characters who are part of a squad like a mission to accomplish episode after episode, which is
Right.
probably what they should have been doing, which is what they'd done in previous seasons, if I'm not mistaken.
Which,
Oh,
had they
so
had the shifter be in earlier on in the story, would have given them that.
right. So there's like, okay, we have to do something to use screen time with Frenchie and also the Kamiko character. Now, we did get at least a bit of a payoff, in a previous episode where we get her backstory, which again, that could have been done in just that one episode and not waste all our time with oh, she keeps running into this girl that she who apparently hates
Yeah,
her for
that didn't
whatever.
really give us
And and never,
much, but when she told us the story, it did.
yeah. But it was one of those, I speak, is where the writer side of my brain or writer experience part of my brain starts work. I felt like, okay, this is something we got to, you know, somehow squeeze into this season, and they just didn't finesse it in very
Right.
well. And so you have this Colin character who shows up. And by the way, I mean, I know it's a fantasy. Obviously, it's a bizarro, crazy, bonkers fantasy show, whatever. But the fact that she just happens to hire someone to work at her organization who turns out to be a guy that he murdered the entire family of from the get go, is always like, that's a really
Convenient.
weird
Yeah.
coincidence there that it seems a bit much and you didn't even realize it. And this is the guy you actually are falling for. And it's like, oh, wait, you're the one that I killed the whole family. Oh, I'm so guilty. I've murdered so many, but now I feel bad because this one I feel bad
Yeah,
about,
see,
whatever. I just,
here's what my preference would have been.
I just think it was
Honestly,
a waste.
if we were gonna have something between these two characters. And I know that you've mentioned a couple times, like the Kamiko Frenchie thing, right? You weren't really involved with that. But I think that if they wanted to have this lead to where it did, I would have been much more enthusiastic of, rather than having a Frenchie story, backstory kind of ish thing with Colin, because we've already had a lot of Frenchie centric episodes that tell us where he's from and who he used to run with and his history. We already know this.
I would have rather brought that character back and get more into
Either
that
bring
stuff.
them back in
'Cause that
specifically,
stuff was great.
or scratch that altogether and give us the true flashback stories of Kamiko rather than her just running into a familiar face. When we got those moments of her telling the story and the interaction with the girls and having to kill all these girls, if those Frenchie moments would have been flashbacks with Kamiko in that life, I would have been probably more involved. I feel like the end result of them coming together would have still been successful because there was no need for Frenchie to that we can see yet. There was no need for Frenchie to go to jail. Nothing came out of it. They literally just plucked him out and said, "Oh, he's out of jail now." So there was no point to that.
Yeah.
That didn't matter. And Kamiko going there and waiting for him did nothing to enhance a love story.
It's all time wasters. It was all
Right.
time wasted.
It didn't
Yeah.
need to be there. And I will also partner that with the stuff that we had from the deep. There's a few things from the deep that were entertaining. But maybe a little bit less with his would have been fine, and spent that more onto something with a little bit, more meat and gravity.
Well, yeah. I mean, my feeling with the deep stuff is that I think there is a specific reason why they're doing that, and I've contended that,
Yeah.
and I see it happen in this episode where he has become, at this point, he has become the main acolyte for Homelander, and becomes his right hand man for murdering everybody because Black Noir is still a guy. He's doing it, but he's still not the guy. And A Train's gone. There's no Queen Maeve. There's not really anyone else. Firecracker, whatever her damn name is. I still don't know what it is that she does. I mean, she has little sparkles or something, but she's not, whatever.
I think that her real purpose for her being there, besides the nursemaid situation, is the media.
Oh no,
she
I
just
understand her
is the
purpose.
media
I understand
outlet,
her purpose on the show, but I'm talking about as far as the deep right now has become beyond Homelander the most powerful,
right.
weapon
I don't
that he
think
has.
that, right, because I don't think that Homelander needs the propaganda anymore.
Yeah,
he's got the placement, so the propaganda machine isn't nearly as important.
Right. So I thought this season was turning a character that had been used almost exclusively as comic relief. Like, yeah, we're going to turn this character into the most psychopathic villain on the show, which is where I think they're going. When he punches through the guy's face, after he gets the guy to say all this stuff, it's like, yeah, I don't believe you. And
right. That wasn't a necessary thing, but he did it because he likes it.
Yeah. He didn't seem to have a problem battering the guys with a bat.
Or killing the wrong Ashley.
Or killing the wrong Ashley. Right.
He is like the Stifler of this group, right? Like every time he chuckles at a death, I'm like, oh my God, it's Stifler.
Yeah.
That's this guy.
But I think he's more like satanic Stifler. So that,
yeah, but he's like an incel, right? So he's right. We're getting what this is the life of an incel, and this is what it leads to. So do you think him going through and causing the death of Ambrosius is mirroring what Ryan just had happen with Mallory? That's it, that's their last shred, and it turns.
Well, that's him turning his back on what he was before, and just giving into just being just a total piece of shit. And then you think of everything he said when he shows up to ostensibly try to kill, everyone at the boys' headquarters there, especially the stuff with Annie, whatever. So why I would defend it as opposed to the Kimiko Frenchie stuff is the progression of Frenchie and Kimiko is, oh, they actually kiss now, which kind of that was kind of the thing, was just lingering there. And she actually says something when they're taking him away, which is what it's like, okay, we're waiting for that moment. We know it's going to happen.
Right.
Like you said, there it is. I mean, I don't know if those are leaps and bounds for these characters to make. Whereas I think the deep thing, I think what's interesting about it is that it's in a show that's not subtle about anything, and especially this season where they just we're not going to be subtle about anything. They took scenes with the deep that would normally have been, especially earlier in the season, were kind of the lighter, sillier stuff from his original scenes with Ambrosius, or when he's having the bro talk with Black Noir or whatever, and but I like that there's always this undercurrent of, this is going darker. This is getting darker. And it got progressively darker throughout the season, to the point where it's now not unusual to see, the deep with blood spattered all over his face and hands. And he's not disgusted by it. He's not put off by it. He seems to be enjoying it. When he had that conversation about violence with Black Noir earlier in the season, I thought, that's very telling, and that's, other than anything that's come out of Homelander's mouth, that's kind of, to me, the creepiest thing I've heard any soup say on this show. And this is the guy who's kind of the goofy parody of Aquaman, and they're doing it with him. That's why I say, like, I just find I just found it just more and more interesting as it went, because at least it was giving me something, and there were also kind of fun or interesting scenes as well. I did not feel that way about any of the Frenchie Kamiko stuff.
Yeah.
None of it was
And I
fun, and it didn't really
and that
go anywhere.
and that is a little disappointing because I really like both of them.
Yeah.
I mean, not even as a duo. I do appreciate the sweetness of that duo.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, I'm not in disagreement at all. I mean, if I were to look at all of the seasons of The Boys, there are moments in this season that really stand out that I really, really loved. But you're putting this on the back of last season. I mean, and last season I felt was probably the peak of the show up to this point. All of the Homelander facing himself and having to figure out who he is was far more interesting to me than Starlight figuring out who she is.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely agree on that one. Speaking of Homelander, I just want, I was thinking about this as I watched the episode, and that's why I wanted to check with you, because I have not rewatched it before we did the podcast, because I don't have time for that. Not this weekend, I didn't, at least. So, since we don't see Homelander actually trash his own place early in the episode, we overhear it, and we walk in with Ryan, and we see the aftermath, right?
Mm-hmm.
So think about this. Think about this episode. And this was the longest episode of the season. It was over an hour. I think it was an hour and change, hour and 8, hour 10, whatever. We got an entire final episode of The Boys, season finale. And we don't see Homelander take any actions of any kind of, other than the heat vision
With
on
Victoria.
Newman, which kind of sort of doesn't really count because it wasn't really,
It was just zap.
Yeah. That's it. Think about that compared to all the other seasons. He's not in, and maybe my issue of not having like the big satisfying fight situation, whatever episode, is because, hey, in one factor, not again, didn't say he had to be involved in it, but it is interesting that things are done, on his orders, of course. If you're going to talk about something I loved in the episode, it's everything about the kill list. That was fantastic. But we don't see Homelander get involved in any fighting at all in the episode. And pretty much everybody else is. Everybody else is at one point or another fighting, except Homelander. I thought that was really interesting. I was like going, huh.
He's getting some sense of control that we haven't seen him have before, which is actually kind of even more terrifying because he always kind of has this air of being in control because he's the scariest,
Right. I mean,
but I mean, like when he's having this spat with Ryan, we're watching him control himself because he's getting furious as when he's like, "Come here."
Well, he's trying to control himself, but one of the problems that he has in this episode, and again, this goes to, I feel like I've said it too many times on this podcast over the years. When a character is usually a main character or something like that, or antagonist, protagonist, usually, or anti-hero, whoever, their biggest flaw is when they feel or they realize they can't control the situation. Like they need to have control. I always go, the most obvious one of all time is Walter White. Walter White is all about if he doesn't have
Yes.
control of it. Homelander does not have control over things throughout this episode. The only time he does take control in any moment, it should probably the scariest thing in the episode, is when he tells Ashley to put together a list of all the Vought employees who might in any way, shape, or form have either done or said or might know something, and she knows instantly what this really is, which is it's a kill list. But from the scene with Ryan, he loses control, rips apart his place, tries to control his son. Son basically says "fuck you" and walks. He doesn't say "fuck you," but he doesn't just walk at him. Can't control his son.
Yep.
All his plans, all his whatever, and he thinks he's above it all, just with that, but loses control of that. everything goes awry, and he's chagrined by the fact that the only reason things are going to work out to his benefit has nothing to do with him. It's Sage who put this all together and realized where this was going to go. He had no idea because he can take no responsibility for it. The only time he then takes control again is, as you said, at the very end at the podium, where he basically kind of moves the new president aside and says what he says, which
But
is
see, we've watched him throughout this season move up into this place where, with the exception of when he goes back to Vought and he, talks to Barbara.
Mhm.
But you're watching him as like, no, he can't control. He hasn't been able to control the narrative. He can't. There's a lot of people he's realizing he can't control. But all of the focus came in, and it started with the end of the season last year when he was facing himself in the mirror. He's learned to control himself. And that's one of the things that was always predictable about some of it is that he'd have hissy fits. There would be a reaction. He'd be pissed. There would be a retribution like that,
right.
right? But now he's gaining control of his faculties of himself, and more than just I'm gonna burn you alive kind of way.
The only thing other than just a general view of the season and episode that I feel should be mentioned, and I'll do it now, is when Ashley knows and
Yes.
realizes that if there's someone, and by the way, who's the one who says, who should be at the top of this list, whatever?
Yep.
The guy who's
Yeah,
gone,
Shouldn't she be on this list?
the guy who's gone the most evil and dark of the whole season, the Deep. So yay for me saying that. Anyway, so Ashley, scurries away and she goes into the Homelander cache of the Compound V to inject herself, whatever. And what we do see her starting to go through a rather horrific and painful and rather muscularly bulbous kind of transformation, and we cut away from it. So I don't know.
Is she going to be the monster that haunts the tower? Like, what's going to happen?
I think we're seeing I think that's also we're seeing in the midst of transformation. So I don't know if that's a final thing that we saw. I don't think it is. So the way I'm looking at it is every, or almost every, because there's probably ones that aren't, but like the guy with the big dick, whatever, love sausage, whatever his name was. But all the main or major soups on the show over the last of these 4 seasons are all based somehow on a DC or Marvel character.
Yep.
The 7 are based on the Justice
Right.
League. We all know who they line up with, and so on. I'm not going to go through all of them. So you start to think about some of the major characters on either side that haven't been done yet or haven't shown up yet, because Soldier Boy is obviously Captain America and so on and whatever. And who hasn't shown up yet? We haven't gotten a Hulk.
Yeah.
Or if you want to say, because it's Ashley, She-Hulk for that matter.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
That could be,
go.
again, that could be where they're going with that, because she was like the way she seemed to be just busting out all over. And I was thinking, we haven't seen anyone like that.
I love that idea, because she's always the one that scurries out of the room.
Yeah.
She's always like, Ashley, blah, 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 and she runs out scared.
Yeah. It's just a guess. It could be, they could be going 18 other different ways, but
Sure.
it was kind of
that.
especially since it's a season where we already saw that the rather silly parody of Spider-Man with Web Weaver, who didn't last very long. So I was thinking, okay, we've gotten Spider-Man and Captain America. Iron Man is the guy who wears the suit, so he wouldn't factor into this. It's like, well, there's Thor and there's Hulk. Oh, Hulk. Hulk would make the most sense.
Yeah, I do enjoy the idea of that.
So overall, look, I know I was sounding kind of negative. I actually did like the episode. I actually think
the episode.
I think the last couple episodes of the season were probably stronger than the first 5 or 6 episodes of the season. Maybe because we seemed to have a trajectory for where they were going, and it was focused, where I think a lot of the season was not.
Yep.
And because characters, hey, look, they're working together and whatever. And we're not throwing these storylines that we either don't really care that much about, or I should speak for myself, that I don't really care that much about, or I cared about, but I didn't know if I needed to spend so many episodes there. Huey and his dad, love the Simon Peggs in it, whatever, but we spent an awful lot of time with that, and Huey pretty much being separate from everything else. You know, I, again, the season, I said it earlier, I'll say it now, it's still true. I think the season simply just wasn't as focused as the previous three were. Yes, it does set up an interesting season 5 where it's like, okay, now we're going to see what the country or world is going to be like under the rule of Homelander. And this shit's going to happen next season because it's the final season.
Yep.
And I'm betting at a third to a half of these characters will not make it out of the season alive. So it's going to be curious to see how what does happen to Homelander? What does happen to Butcher? Does Butcher kill Homelander just before he dies himself? Does someone else do? I mean, it feels like it has to be Butcher doing it to Homelander. I
I
can't.
have just a curious thought.
Yep.
When we're talking about Butcher and meeting his end, all of that being a possibility. I might be shooting in the dark, but I find it's, other than us knowing that now the boys, everyone who's in the boys, whoever their family is now no longer in danger as they move forward.
Mm-hmm.
So I could see that Huey's father's death being a part of that idea. So there's that separate, which could just be that. But there's also this idea that's kind of been tinkering in my head that it's a setup because to the point that Huey's going to have to take down Butcher.
That could happen, but I think I mean, especially with the way the season ended with the situation at Butcher, how we've left Butcher right now. But I don't know if I'm looking at season 5 as Butcher's the main antagonist for them to be worried about, because quite frankly, it's the guy who's really in control of the world.
Absolutely. But the reason this is where it comes in. This is where the entanglement is in my head. I'm trying to
Also, are you gonna have Huey kill his father and then his father figure in the same series?
I mean, I guess there's some similarity to that. But what I'm really kind of more panning in on is the fact that there's this constant repeat about there's constant repeat about Annie saving kids. And then there's this whole idea of Annie and Huey weren't ready to be parents. And then there's the idea of there's this kid floating around that may or may not turn out to be an evil shit, but he doesn't have any parents. And then there's the idea of Butcher, who is kind of the father figure, is hell-bent on finding all of these soups, especially this one now, and killing them. So there's some very messy entanglement of that idea in the back of my head, but nothing that I could directly lay out as this is how it would be.
Okay.
I feel like
I don't know what to say to that. It's like, okay.
My gut tells me that at some point in time, Huey is going to step in to protect Ryan, and he's going to have to step in front of Butcher to do it.
All right. I'll say I think it's almost I think it kind of goes without saying that if someone's going to be the one to kill Butcher as Huey, that's not really, if you're,
we're writing it down.
That's if you're hanging, that's literally like if you're hanging from a limb, but your feet are still touching the ground. It's not really going out there too much. Same way it really does have to be Butcher being the one to take down Homelander more than any other character, because this whole thing was their issue with each other. They've been the ones who've been in opposition to each other, from the get-go. If you don't have it be those two, then again, it would be I think it would be somewhat unsatisfying otherwise. As much as, as great a character as Huey is, doesn't make sense to me for it to be Huey. But Butcher's the one I think it makes the most sense for. But we'll see. I think they both die. I think Frenchie and Kamiko are going to die.
Yeah, I think so too.
Who else is in there? I think Huey will live. I think
Huey and Starlight are going to raise all those damn suit babies. I'm telling you, those kids need parents.
I think MM will live.
Yeah, he's got to get back to his wife and kids. It's going to happen.
I don't really want Starlight to live, but she probably will. But
she's gonna. I'm sorry.
Well, No, just like all the other shows we watch, you always have to keep some of the boring characters. So again, I kind of want, unless there's something else, I want to hurry up and move on. But I'll just
Okay, I just wanted to point out there was like one or two things I just really liked. They're not really story remnant, but I just moments that I marked down that I really liked. I liked that when we have the moment where Firecracker's sitting there dying of, this medication that she was taking in order to take care of Homelander. She kept coughing and he kept saying, "Get further away, get further away, get further away." And she just looked like hell warmed over, big dark circles under her eyes. And then when all of this starts to collapse and he, after he's talked to Sage, the next time we see her is on camera and she looks bright and healthy, and you can tell she's not having to take that medication to be his nursemaid anymore.
hmm.
So like a lot was said there without saying anything, and I thought that was really great. So that's something that I have written down in there. Just a bunch of little nods on things that I liked about, certain sets and stuff. I really liked this episode. I thought it was the strong, just like you said, it had a good point, start, finish. I think it was the strongest episode of the season. This season was not the strongest season of the series, but I didn't dislike it. I enjoyed every episode. Um, I think five's going to be awesome. Like I think when we walk out of this series, I feel like we'll be satisfied with the final season.
I did like the scene of him making her move over seat after seat, just like
Well,
keep
further,
going, keep
further.
going, keep going. It was very similar to a scene in, I'm gonna keep connecting the two, The Bear, where Richie keeps telling the main fact to move, a little further, just
Hmm.
essentially moves him off camera, which
All
I
the way over
thought was
there.
hysterical. Pretty much the same thing. I didn't notice how bad her face looked at the time, but
She
I'll
had
take
those
your word
big
for it.
darks, yeah, those
I'll
big
take your word
dark
for it. I
circles.
believe
And
you. I believe you.
I also really liked when we had Victoria and her daughter, is her name Chloe?
Zoe.
Uh, Zoe, where they were in the room with the boys when they were, ready to make the deal. And that glance from Kamiko over to her, it's like, this is a little girl, but Kamiko's face when she looked at her was like, that's the girl that killed other girls. Like, it was very menacing. And that was just a nice a
Right.
second of a visual.
Gotcha. Like I said, I liked the episode fine. I don't think I liked it the best out of the season. I think the previous episode was actually better. Um, and yeah, I already said I think it's the weakest of the four seasons. I mean, if I was going to rank them, I'm not, I didn't write anything down, so I don't really need to rank them in my head. I don't know if I'm torn if I like the third season the best. I think I'm leaning that way. Although I did
That's
really like
that's how
season
I
two
feel.
with Stormfront. It's a really tough one. That's a tough one for me to go
If they
back
would
and
have
forth.
used the song, number two would have
Yes.
been your winning
True. You
season.
know
I
what?
know.
There you go. There you go. Right, right. If they'd used the song Stormfront, considering they kept hitting us with the whole Billy Joel thing all along, and then you don't. And again, I've never gotten around to googling this. I got a feeling I'll Google it and I'll find out. Oh, he just didn't want to give them an okay. Okay, you don't want to have your song associated with like a Nazi character. I guess I understand. Um, I'm not going to say I'm not looking forward to season five. I absolutely am. By the same token, I am kind of thinking it's a good idea that it's the final season. Better to end it now because it's starting to, the seams are starting to show a little bit on it, a bit here.
Yeah, as
Um,
shows can do. You
some
bet.
do, but I'm fascinated to see where they go with it. And, yeah, good job.
I I kind of feel like this season two was a little bit hard to. I really, really loved Gen V. I mean, I did. I loved that one season that we've had of Gen V. I really, really enjoyed it.
I should just say, I thank you for mentioning that. And this will be another way for me to, smack this season. I'm sorry. And I'm going to say from the outset, it's a little unfair for me to do this because I've said before, again, when I was talking about the bear, it's almost unfair to compare the first season of any show to any subsequent seasons or seasons
Right.
of it because your world building, your character. Now, Gen V, the world was already kind of built to a certain extent because it's from the boys' universe. It's
Yep.
just this specific school. So some of the hard work was already done, because we go into that already knowing the universe, already getting the fact that there are soups and how they are. And now we're going to
Some
see
crossover
the
characters.
world, and the world that we're building is just specific to this school about that with the social point ratings and so on and so forth. Anyway, so that's why I still feel it's a valid comparison. Gen V season 1 is considerably better
Yep.
than season 4 of The Boys. That's the way I look at it.
Yeah.
It's kind of like the way people talk about how they say Rogue One is better than the thing. I'm like, maybe. Okay. All right. I clap because I don't want to talk about it anymore.
Let's just hope that the real world comparisons stop after this season.
Mm.
We got 2 years before this one's going to come. This next season's going to come out. So crossing our fingers.
Ridiculous. It takes that long. Alrighty then. So now we will move on to our little convo about the other show that we watch that pops up on Thursday nights on our radar and on our TV screen eventually. And that would be Evil. And that was I believe it's the 9th episode of the season. And the title was for that one, How to Build a Chatbot. I kept thinking it was How to Train a Chatbot, but I believe it's How to Build a Chatbot. Should we let's cut to the thing that I think both of us, and I think most people, if not all who watch show, was the thing that made us go, oh, okay, that's something, that's huge, that's major, that just threw a monkey wrench into everything. That's going to make me wonder, where do they go from here? And oh boy, Cheryl, you might be in trouble. What they ended up doing with Leland. I mean, okay, number one, the thing I want to give them a massive amount of credit for, especially after watching The Boys, and there being only maybe a couple things that were like mildly surprising, like, the thing with Newman and Homeland at the beginning of that episode, whatever. This pulled, for me at least, it pulled off a major surprise that I will confess I did not see coming. And to the point where I was like, whoa, I didn't know he could do that. What happens now? Oh my God. And what was Michael Emerson's reaction when he got that script for this episode?
You know what? Whenever there's an Emerson's going to do what an Emerson's got to do.
That's right. Doesn't matter if you're Jacob or, the manager. Either way, he's going to stab the fuck out of you.
Oh my God. And Cheryl in that crowd, like, oh shit. It's like, that was perfect.
I mean, to see the tide turn during the course of that episode where she was like on, because she's been doing so well about, getting ahead of, Leland and
the glass ceiling crashed through.
And love that. And getting the women to bond together and having those really rough and tough conversations with the manager or whatever. And she thought, oh, she's actually going to be able to get him fired. I can't believe that, even though he was pushing back on it. And then you have Leland showing up and basically butchering the manager and eating his heart. And I was like, whoa, I did not see that coming. And I can't wait for the next episode. I was actually initially sad that when I realized next week, oh no more boys. Does that mean we're going to talk about this Evil? I mean, I do love the Evil, but there's not a lot to talk about with just Evil. I mean, we might talk about some other things. I'm sure we will. Maybe we will. But when I saw that, I was like, okay, you just gave us something big to talk about. What's going to happen from this point on? And it was like, oh, does that mean he gets to be in charge? Is Leland going to go through a transformation? Is he still taking us stuff? How old is You know what? I've watched 4 seasons of this show, and I'm so wouldn't you love to know more about the Leland character? Like just from where,
I want to know. I want to know, where'd you come from? How did this start? How long have you been here?
how old is he? I want to know because because if he's been taking those stuff the way she's been, and the implication he's been doing this all along, like maybe he's like
Are we going to see Emerson in like prosthetics?
is he like the dad? Is he like the dad from the Umbrella Academy? Is he an alien? Except he's a demon, not an alien, but he's been around for like hundreds of years or something.
Just keeps popping through. You know, one of my favorite moments of the episode, as little as it was, is when the manager handed him that damn office box. There was just something so ridiculous about the idea of this giant, scary manager demon just having something as casual as like a fold out office box and say, pack your office.
No, it's the fact that the fun way they incorporate. Well, do you mean to use the word incorporate? That's kind of funny. They incorporate the typical corporate bureaucracy into this evil satanic, satanic organization, which, to be fair, I have seen to a certain extent on a little show called Angel, which had an entire law firm, which was basically based around, demons and Satans and whatever. But here it's done in a slightly, it's not as much of a focus, but there's still such a fun thing with Emerson. And, Christine Lottie's kind of won me over this season because she's just been more fun this season than she's been previously, I think. So
sometimes it is a big payoff when a character in a show finally decides on this is who I am.
Right.
And you're not pretending to be like noble. And you're just going to, buy into the idea that you're the villain, or, you might not be a villain in your own little world, but the rest of the world would see you as that and you're okay with it.
Right. Because at the end of the day, she gets these demonic Botox-like treatments, and that's what it's all about, her vanity. So that was the really cool part of the episode. Now, the rest of the episode, I'm not going to say I disliked it. That would be way too strong. Way too strong. In fact, I will even commend them that at least you had the three involved in a case and they all kind of played their part separately, but had, an adequate amount of screen time. We got stuff with David, we got stuff with Kristen. The Kristen thing was I gotta give him credit. The thing with Kristen was very funny. And I was kind of enjoying that they went there. And even to a certain extent with Ben as well. When his sister shows up. I love his sister.
I loved that. Yes.
His sister is so great.
The idea of them both getting, told off by an AI version of their mother.
Oh, it
was so great.
So
I loved all the Ben stuff. All of the Ben stuff in this episode I loved.
Always love that stuff. And also, I can't resist. I want to point out one thing I kind of enjoyed about the episode. Just I enjoy seeing the actors show up. Is when they go to the place that is creating this AI for people who have passed on already, and they're mainly dealing with the psychologist that they've hired that works for them there. It should also be noted, they didn't really try to hit this too hard because I think they played it a little bit more subtle, but I thought it was really interesting to have scenes where you have one psychologist who you could say has quote unquote sold out and is working for a corporation, who's being spoken to by another psychologist who, I don't know if you'd say sold out, but she's working for the church. So on both sides, there are people who are not really holding true to what their profession was intended to be initially.
Yes.
So I thought that was kind of an interesting thing.
The idea that both of them, I mean, one in the corporate world and one in the church world, are essentially working for an ethics department, adds to the irony of the situation.
And the actor who's playing the psychologist working for the company, It was played by Santino Fontana, who I remember fondly from mainly from Crazy Ex-Girlfriend. He was probably my favorite character on that until he had to leave, and then they recast him when they brought the character back. And no offense to the guy who was playing the new version of that character, because he could dance and sing, decently, whatever. But
Just not my thing.
he never had the same kind of cool, snarky charm. And every once in a while, I'll see Santino Fontana show up in something like as you remember, he was on, he played a minor recurring character on the marvelous, Miss
Yes.
Maisel in one season. And I've seen him on a couple of things. He's done a lot of Broadway stuff. So I know he was a star of something that was on Broadway a couple of years back. But I was just like, hey, look who it is. It's like, oh, you know what? Maybe this could be a musical episode because I know he can handle a funny song. Come on, come on. No, they didn't go there. But outside of that, I was kind of like, I wasn't that. Maybe I got spoiled by the previous few episodes where the usual case of the week thing didn't really take up any time, if there was a case at all, for that
Right.
matter. And this episode, because again, we got some nice moments, and again, I'm not going to say it was a bad episode, but I was decidedly not that interested in the whole
Yeah.
chatbot thing.
Yeah. I kind of feel like this episode, like, with the exception of, 10, 12 minutes of the episode, kind of goes into the same office box, if you will, as The Muse.
Yeah,
It's
yeah,
just, it's like, I don't hate it because it's part of the season storyline, but as a standalone, eh.
yeah. I felt that aspect of it was definitely weaker. Also because, look, one of the things that we kind of are consistently even surprised by with Evil is that they have been very good at ratcheting up the actual creepy, scary factor on the
Right.
show. They make such lovely, as you've spoken and I've spoken about many times over the last few weeks, just about the use of, something in the corner. Do we actually see something in that dark area? Or maybe the fact it's so bright and white is also, there's something kind of off-putting about that. And they've done it throughout the season. Everything from, the what do you call that damn thing? Beginning of the season, not the converter, the collider.
Yes. Oh, yes. The particle collider.
The particle collider that just goes on forever and ever. And I love the app,
That was very Kubrick.
it
Yes.
was so Kubrickian with white, and then then it goes in reverse when we get to that hole, which is this black abyss, whatever. And it just touches like that, just play on your subconscious fears, and they do it all the time with the show. Like the djinn in the corner on the side of the screen, you can barely see it. The demon on the stair on the not the stairs, the train trestle,
Yeah.
which was you were talking about, which I thought was also equally brilliant. This, it's more of an audio thing. I felt it was kind of obvious where we were going to go with the different things. I mean, the Kristen thing was just funny. And the fact that they were going to replay it there. And she had to warn David. That was one of my favorite parts about the
That was pretty
episode.
great.
I'll give him, I want to give him a
Like, no, you just
thousand
need to
points
go
in
a little
credit
bit
for
further. Go a little bit further. See, there we are again with that being
that was funny.
the line of the night. Just a little further.
But, but for me, I felt there was nothing about it that I found particularly like scary,
It didn't
creepy,
mean
whatever.
anything.
I was just like,
Yeah.
okay, it's fine. Can we get to some other stuff? I mean, maybe when Father Ignatius was initially getting the calls and
Yeah,
the
I thought,
texts,
oh, that's kind of creepy. That's interesting.
that was kind of interesting, especially because, and I might be wrong about this. I really should look it up before, you know what? I don't want to say this um, without checking, because if I'm wrong, then I'm going to feel really stupid, which isn't that unusual for me. But I did think that part was pretty, fell into the creepy category, even though I kept thinking, well, obviously anyone who's paid attention to anything over the last year or two, it's an AI thing. So, and I was like, oh wait, what is this episode called again?
Right.
Give me a second. I just want to make sure about something before I say it. Where is he? Where is he? Where is he? Talk about something for a minute while I look this.
Yeah, again,
There
with
we
the
go.
stuff with Ben, I really loved the whole scene with the fedora and the eyeglasses and the aluminum cap under the fedora. Um, the realization that he's, wearing these sunglasses because they have a camera. So now we can keep track of all the things that he's doing when he's blacking out.
Mhm.
I think that's great that they incorporated that into his story without really having to go into it and explaining it. So now he knows where he's going. And now he's actually showing the migraines, which is something different than the last few seasons, or episodes rather, where he's acknowledging pain is now coming in with these migraines. So you were right. They were going to probably push more on these migraines.
Right. You know what? For some reason, and I feel like I'm just getting him confused with maybe a different actor. Maybe, I don't know if it was on this show or a different one. Maybe it was the priest before that priest. Maybe that's what I'm thinking. Because for some reason, I thought that actor had actually died.
Yes, there was there.
But maybe it was the
was,
actor before him, because I just looked him up. No, he's
Yep.
still alive. It's not him. Maybe he
Yep.
took over for the actor before him who actually did pass away, and I just got them confused. And if I had thought about that before the podcast, I would have looked it up, but I didn't know because I didn't write down a goddamn note for this entire thing. But
Freewheeling.
I did. I you know what? I did write something down just before we started the podcast because I want to keep to what I've been doing in my previous ones. The opening credits were about
Yep.
16 or so minutes in, and the warning this time was, it takes only 50 seconds to watch this intro. A haunting lasts a lifetime. Then I think another little pop-up said, don't risk it. They're so silly. So yeah, it was okay. You're right. I agree. I'd put it under the Muse. Is that the one with the stupid dancing crap?
You bet.
There you go. Yeah. Right. Ooh, I might like this one. Do I like this one better than that?
I like this one better than that.
Yeah, I like it because I just couldn't. I didn't like the actress or the character with the dancing and the witches and this. Yeah, I hated all that.
Yeah, just didn't love that.
Least favorite episode of the season, but easily.
Agreed.
This is just okay. The previous one was so much better than this one, but we at least the Leland Charles stuff was great. And
it really was.
And there was at least there was a few little fun. The Ben stuff was great. And the moment between David and Kristen when she has to, especially after he hears what was done, that was kind of fun. I'll give him credit for that. But overall, meh.
Also, I do we didn't really touch on this. Because we talked about the Leland stuff, but what we didn't mention is this battle of his belief that a mother can make something evil, that a mother can make an antichrist happen, because that was his argument with the management, right? Once it was realized that the antichrist was baptized, now he can't be the antichrist.
Mm-hmm.
And he said, no, you can't underestimate what the right mother can do.
Oh, I see. Which is interesting considering how, to put it mildly, chauvinistic or even misogynistic the organization and the manager was previous to that. The way they, the idea of women being on the board, the whole glass ceiling gag and everything else. So the fact that they would then reverse course, although to be fair, and to be honest, we also know Leland is essentially trying to save his own skin here.
Yep.
So how much?
Got to come up with an idea, because he was panicked as shit when he found out.
Whether he truly believes that to be the case or not, he certainly hopes it's going to be the case. Although now maybe he doesn't have to care because he killed the manager anyway. So there you go.
And this isn't the first time we've seen him kill a demon structure. So maybe we shouldn't have been surprised that he jumped in and took a stab, as it were.
Took a stab. Well, look at you. All right. So that is all I really have to say about that episode. We knew we weren't going to talk too much about evil. This was even the picture I made for the podcast. I actually made it like it's mainly like a boy's image, and then I put Leland in a little square in the corner. So that's because I had a feeling that's where this podcast was going to go ahead of time. Again, without one motherfucking note. So hopefully you found this podcast notable and you liked it, and which means you might like hanging out on our Facebook page as well. It's a Serious TV Drama Podcast page. Like the page and join the conversation about shows like Evil, like The Boys, like pretty much anything, like them shows that are upcoming, because we've got, Umbrella Academy is, going to be here
Yeah.
in a few weeks. This new Batman animated series looks, balls amazing, and some other stuff is coming too. I think I got to get to that Cobra Kai thing that just came out. I'm hearing not such great things, but I'm going to decide for myself because that's not like The Boys. I can have a lower expectation with a show like Cobra Kai and still just enjoy it for what it is. Anyway, but you can have conversations like that, or you can comment on the podcast. Maybe one time someone will say something that we'll bring up in the podcast. It probably won't ever happen, but it could happen. You can also follow us. Let's see. You can follow us on X Twitter. We're still there, at STVD Podcast. You can follow us on Instagram. It's Serious TV Drama as one word. And if you can find, as you know already, because you've already listened to us, you can find us on pretty much most, if not all, podcast platforms. Oh, wanted to make a special mention. So, somebody, a listener that we both know, Mr. Dennis, apparently actually posted a review on Apple Podcasts, which bumped that one that was irritating me.
Yay.
And here's the funny thing. Technically, it shouldn't have bumped it off because the other positive one was earlier than that one. But I guess Apple Podcast just decided to, we like Scott this week, or the STVD podcast this week. And it knocked the other one off because Dennis wrote a very nice review, more specific to the Bear podcast I did with Brian, but he also made it also a general comment about the podcast overall. So I was very pleased to see that. So
thanks, Dennis.
So technically, none of you have to write any more reviews anymore. We're good.
So basically what we're saying is that Dennis is our favorite right now.
Right now, Dennis is our favorite. You see how things change in life. However, if people want to go write reviews of Scott Forgot the 80s, because I could use some reviews there, because there are good reviews that are there, but I'm more annoyed that the people who wrote them, and I think I know who one of the two are, they didn't they must have let autocorrect take over their reviews, and I can
it wasn't me, I swear to God.
I can see there's things that are incorrect, and they didn't check them, and I was like going,
I just see everyone looking at me the second you send that. It's not me, I promise.
Okay, I'm just saying. I was like, maybe check it before you hit enter, people. One of these days I will get back to that podcast. I've had a lot of stuff going on this year and this summer. Plus I haven't been able to find a co-host to talk about either Flashdance or Purple Rain. So I haven't decided what I'm going to do about that. I could switch movies.
It is a fantastic podcast. If you haven't listened or there's episodes that you missed, go check them out in the meantime.
Yeah, Jamie's appeared on a few of them. Those are pretty good ones. I think they're all been pretty good. Some are better than others.
They really have.
I mean, if you want to listen to the funniest one, listen to the one where I hate a show, where I really hated the movie, which is the Never-Ending Story. Ugh.
There is some sort of movie coming out that's in that world.
Oh, God, I think I read about that. It's like, why?
Emerson is in it.
I don't care. You know what? I wouldn't care if it was filmed 20 years ago and then somehow they convinced Jack Nicholson to be in it. I still wouldn't see it. All right.
It's narrated by Falcor. It's just, I'm sure it's everything you could possibly love, Scott.
No, thank you. No, thank you. No, thank you. I don't care. I don't care if you get Giancarlo to be in it. Although, interesting little weird TV note that I thought was really fascinating. So this new last week, I guess you can call it a spinoff from Harley Quinn started called Kite Man. Hell yeah!
I saw that.
Premiered with 2 episodes. I enjoyed them quite a bit. We'll see if the show has the same kind of heart to the main characters to it that Harley Quinn does, but I found it very encouraging and funny, and it's part of that world. It's pretty much the same, everything. But the interesting thing, just for those who appreciate specific actors, on Harley Quinn, Giancarlo Esposito is the voice of Lex Luthor. Now, we all know Giancarlo Esposito is always doing like 8 million other things. He's in this movie, he's in this TV show, he's here, he's everywhere. He's in 18 other things that are coming out probably next week, whatever. So apparently he didn't do the voice for Lex Luthor for this series. It's not Giancarlo Esposito. What's interesting is who it is. and and it's poignant as well. It's Lance Reddick. Lance Reddick, who is no longer with us. This is Lance Reddick's last part, I believe, is playing Lex Luthor
Oh,
on this. So
that's such a great voice too.
for those of you who know Lance Reddick from everything from, you can go back to Oz, The Wire, mainly, Fringe, briefly on Lost, and
Lost, yep.
all these shows. I mean, I think if there's one to go to, it's The Wire, because that's the biggest role of all those, by far. But he's got that great speaking voice, and it is kind of funny, like going, because I'm watching it, and I see Lex Luthor, and I know, and I can tell right after that, that's not Giancarlo. I was like, that voice sounds really familiar to me, man. Who is that? And then I waited, then I waited for the credits, and whenever these cartoons on, you have to really be good with the pause button just to get it. Like, oh, there it is. It's like, Lance Reddick. Wait a minute, isn't Lance Reddick? I know he died. And I looked him up, and like, oh, this is like the last thing he did. Holy crap. Speaking of Michael Emerson, we keep talking about Michael Emerson, and he was the voice of Brainiac in this season 2 of My Adventures of Superman. By the way, DCEU, whatever you're calling yourselves now, James Gunn, whatever. If you guys decide to do a Brainiac thing, and especially if it's going to be like a CGI kind of whatever, do yourself a favor. At least strongly consider having Michael Emerson be the voice of Brainiac. It was fantastic. His voice was fantastic for it. Oh, by the way, although also connected to the voice, because Jack Quaid is plays Superman Clark Kent on it, whatever. Most of the other voice actors, folks wouldn't really know. I recognize one or two here or there, but not really. Except for there's one person who's shown up in a couple episodes in these scenes where they show Superman's original parents, Jor-El and Lara. A woman named Ray Seahorn plays
Hey, we know her.
Oh, and just to finish this off, and then to finish off the podcast, and back to Kite Man, hell yeah. Hey, you know the voices of the guy who owns the bar that they end up buying the bar from? Some guy named Jonathan something. I believe Banks is the voice there.
Shocked face.
So I was like, look at that. All our favorites all in one. Anyhow, did I go through all the things? Yes, I did.
And I'm pretty sure we're going to continue talking about evil as the season progresses in one way, shape, or form.
Yeah, we will continue to cover evil on the podcast. Next week, obviously, we're going to be talking about that. I think between now and then, Jamie and I will talk a bit, and maybe we'll just both maybe talk for a few minutes about different things that we've been watching as of late, something like that. I do anticipate when Umbrella Academy comes back.
I'm so excited for that.
Well, I'll keep it with you, and I'll do Umbrella Academy with you, and I won't.
I think it might be my most anticipated season of the year.
Your enthusiasm about it is making me want to enlist you instead of bugging Kimber. I feel like there's something else coming out that I might have wanted to. I don't know if I'll talk anything. I might talk about the Batman animated series when it comes out, but I feel like there's something else I'm forgetting. Whatever. There should be more than enough content for us to talk about stuff throughout August.
We live in a world that's great for movies and television. That's right. One thing I will hand this generation that's at the helm. It's always producing.
Hey, did you see that Fallout got nominated for Best Drama?
I did. I did indeed.
A lot of weird Emmy nominations this year, but some good ones. Although some of them almost fall into the look, it's the too little, too late category, which I've seen that happen. which it's either there's a shows that don't get nominated till it's already but the show's already gone, yep. or they've always get nominated but they don't win until they're already gone, So we saw that happen. It's like, oh, look, they finally gave Reservation Dogs some fucking love. It's like, yeah, meanwhile, it's not coming back for anything. So it's not going to be like, oh, it's going to help it for
this. Thanks a lot, guys. But you know what? Whatever. Give it to them. Give it everything to them.
Well, unfortunately, I think it's going to be probably the easiest bet of all is going to be to guess where pretty much most, if not, well, you know what? Probably every prominent Emmy in the quote unquote comedy category pretty sure where they're going to be going this year at the Emmys. To the show, the main show that's really comedy, really. Just because it's a short format, because it's most of the dramas are funnier than this quote unquote
Yep.
comedy. Because remember that season 2 is what's been nominated, not season
Yep.
3. So the season of Fishes and Forks. By the way,
Yep.
Fishes got the writing nomination, not Forks. Interesting.
That is interesting. And a little nomination for Odenkirk too. So
It would not shock me if Odenkirk ended up getting an Emmy for that. And because
yes.
I've seen this happen before, specifically with the Emmys. I mean, there's different things with the movies as well, but with the Emmys, where someone who might have gotten any number of nominations for a lead role, whatever, didn't get, and then when they finally got something, it was for a guest actor. I'll give you who, and I kind of want to end the podcast shortly after this, after you say something. We've had a lot of people. It's been a weird week or two, just, either be American history wise, or a lot of people have passed away in the last week or so.
Yeah.
It was like less than 2 weeks ago. It started with Shelley Duvall. Then you had Dr. Ruth and Richard Simmons and Shannon Doherty, and then Bob Newhart. See where I just went. See how I bring it all together? Don't need notes, just need Scott. Bob Newhart, who never got an award, an Emmy, for the Bob Newhart Show, or for Newhart. I believe there were some nominations in there here or there, but never won anything. But the first time he ever won an Emmy was for Best Guest Actor, for his initial appearance on The Big Bang Theory.
Mm-hmm.
And that's when he first won. I think he won like one other Emmy. I don't think it was for the same role, but it might. I don't remember what that was. I didn't look it up, but I just remember that thinking, interesting. But a legend has been around so long, and that's when he finally wins an Emmy for. And again, I loved him on the show. It's just, you think he would have won one for those others, but then you go back and look at who did win. It's like, oh, I can't argue with giving it to, like, Tony Randall or Jack Klugman for The Odd Couple, because I prefer them. But anyway, just thought of that when I was thinking about Bob Odenkirk. I was like, yeah, I can see Bob Odenkirk winning for that.
Bob's got a nomination, and he's not sharing that nomination spot with Jason Bateman. So go get it, Bob.
Don't get me started there. Anyway, so great podcast, fun podcast, and mainly because it's always fun and great doing these things with you, Jamie. So thank you so much for making yourself available. And thank you guys out there for listening as well. And again, we will see you next week. Until then, have a great week. I don't know. I never know how to end these fucking things. Whatever.
Later, taters.